I knew a girl in high school who wanted to breathe re. She put lighter fluid in her mouth, and instead of blowing it onto a flame, she lit it on fire inside her mouth and then tried to blow it out. She came to school the next day with a bandage over half her face. Grade 11 law class in high school, the teacher was talking about different bills the government implemented in history, like the Bill of Rights, for example. 30 minutes into the lesson, the girl next to me raises her hand and asks the teacher, "Who's this Bill guy we've been talking about?" The whole class burst out laughing, and the teacher was struggling to keep it together as well. A friend was substitute teaching a high school math class and was to proctor a test for the students. At one point during the test, a student got up to ask if he knew what 8x7 was, but before he could respond, another student said, "Sit down. He doesn't know the answer to that. He's a substitute teacher, not a math teacher." This had happened in high school, senior year. Our teacher was talking about the phases of the moon, and this girl raised her hand and asked if other countries have moons too. She thought the moon was only for the US. In the midst of an English Renaissance literature course, one of my fellow students raised her hand. "Doctor, Professor, I am just so, how did these people survive without Wally World?" She meant Walmart. She wanted to know how Renaissance-era people survived without Walmart. Our professor stared at her for a couple seconds and then moved on with his lecture as if he hadn't heard. In a class at a university, a girl did a presentation on Benjamin Franklin in which she stated, totally seriously and confidently, that he had been President of the United States. I'm a French teacher. Everyone in the class had a fairly lengthy piece of French homework, and one student put the entire thing in Google Translate, but translated it to Spanish. I was filling out some test paperwork for my fourth grade students from the data their parents had sent me. One student's mother forgot to write his birth date on the paper, so I asked him when his birthday was. He told me July 3rd. I asked what year. He looked at me confused and said, "Every year." I once gave a university student a C on a philosophy paper. She looked at me and said, "Do you know who my father is?" To this day, I don't know who he was, but her grade did not change. During a foreign language class, when learning the names of different countries, someone stopped the lecture and asked why this language we were learning made up names for different countries. Why can't we just use the real names like Germany, Japan, etc.? Total silence. Then 10 minutes of the entire class trying to get this person to understand that Germany is not the name of Germany in German. That all these country names they know are all English, made-up names for those countries. They did not comprehend. Confounds me to this date as this person was not from an English-speaking country. A girl in my high school said that if she and her hypothetical husband had undesirable face features that they didn't want to pass on to a child, like a bumpy nose, one of them would just plastic surgery before conceiving a child. When I said that with her logic, if both me and my partner chopped off our index fingers, our child would be born without index fingers. She said that wasn't the same thing. We were 17 at the time. I still think about that, 18 years later. One quiz question asked students to share their comfort level with performing CPR. A student's response was, "As an AL, I cannot perform CPR. AL is so new, and no one knows how to use it as a learning tool. It's evolving faster than we can harness." My mom isn't a professor, but she sometimes supervises college students who study under her in a practicum setting. She was on a home visit with a student once. She's a social worker, and the family was showing my mom and the student around their farm. The matriarch of the family was gathering chicken eggs and commented on how small some of them were. The student suggested placing them back in the hen's nest so that they would have more time to grow. This senior in college thought that eggs grow bigger the longer they can remain in the nest, like vegetables or something. This is also in a very rural place where probably half the population has some kind of farm or livestock. I had one sophomore this year who couldn't wrap her mind around 20 more than in a certain problem. I tried to explain it for a few minutes, saying, "Let's say you and I go into a store. I'm going to buy some apples, and you plan on buying 20 more apples than I do. If I buy 5 apples, how many would you buy?" She answered, 20? My sister teaches 3rd grade. During a Zoom class, one kid put his hand up, but instead of asking a question, he announced to the class, My dog is getting his balls cut off today. My sis gets major points for only losing it for a half a second, and then replying, well, it sounds like you'll need to be extra gentle with him for a few days. When my mom was a history teacher at a local high school, they went on a trip to Spain. One girl, let's call her Megan, was not quite a clever student. They went to a restaurant to eat, and Megan was looking at the menu. She was frowning the whole time and made some noises and looked like she was struggling with the language. My mom told her there was an English menu on the other page because she didn't understand Spanish. 3 minutes later, she still looked confused. My mom asked her what was wrong. Megan then asked my mom why the English language was so different than they learned at school. Megan didn't understand a word. My mom looked at her menu, went quiet for a second, and told Megan she was reading the German menu. Met a nursing student who more or less believed the cure for cancer was pretending like you don't have cancer. My favorite would have to be the 7-year-old kid who, after working on math, announced to the hallway, "My brain feels like a dead goldfish." I was so thankful for a mask to hide how hard I was laughing. I came into work a little more dressed up than usual in a pantsuit. One of my first graders said, "Wow, you look like you're going to a real job." And once, in 3rd grade, the vocabulary word was deliberate. One student's sentence was, "I want to eat a pizza, but I have to wait for them to deliberate." I know someone whose car was keyed one night, so he drove to the police station to report it, except he was drunk. The cops clearly saw him actually driving under the influence. He's awaiting the judge's decision now and is very mad that the cops took his license away, but what choice did they have? He wouldn't have gotten away with it. But a patron of the bar that my sister worked at many years ago was stopped by the troopers while driving along next to the highway in the ditch. His explanation, "Officer, I'm way too drunk to be on the road." Friend was pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt while he was with a few buddies. Gets handed his ticket. Guy in the back seat says, "Am I going to get a ticket too?" Officer replies, "Well, were you wearing your seatbelt?" No." "All right, can I see your ID?" Not the brightest fella about. A house in my local village was a notorious drug den. The police came to search the place but couldn't find anything. As they were leaving, the lovely owner yelled at them that they should have brought the drug dogs. So yeah, they came back a few days later with the drug-sniffing dogs and found huge amounts of drugs hidden away. Absolute morons. My ex-boyfriend started beating me in front of 4 of my friends, and after they pulled him off of me, he called the police on them for assault. My sister is a Sergeant LEO that used to work in robbery. She shows up to court to be present for the case where a guy is on the trial for robbing a bank. They have him on camera and he wants to represent himself. No lawyer. His opening line is, "Yes, Your Honor. I'd just like to point out that you can't tell that was me on camera because I was wearing a hat." Yeah, that was a fast trial.